Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm Paradoxic, and welcome back to the Umbrella Academy. This time we're on Season 2, Episode 6. Last time we lost one of the Swedes. Towards the very end, we lost one of the Swedes and his brothers through a very, very Swedish, a very Valhalla-like funeral for him. Very Valhalla-like funeral. Like they put his body on a boat, set it on fire, and the entire scene had the Swedish version of "Hello" by Adele running in the background, which I think it was actually quite fitting. It was quite fitting to the scene. So that happened, and I think the handler actually drew them in using that. The handler had Lila steal a couple of Diego's knives, I feel, because one of his knives, I think, well, at least she had him steal at least one of his knives and then use that to lure the Swedes into use that and a picture, like an actual commissioned target picture of Diego to lure them into the woods and then blow one of them up with a trip mine. So that happened. But then one of his knives was actually sent to Diego and to Luther to actually invite them to a dinner reception held by Reginald Hargreeve himself. So I think, given that his knives were given to him by Reginald, I think Reginald would have his own set of like blades on him. So I think Reginald might have actually sent like a genuine invitation to Luther and Diego, but then she must have had Lila steal one of his blades to actually lure the Swedes to the spot in the woods and then kill them. So that's one less Swede to have to take care of. But I think they will be back for a vengeance. They will likely be back for a vengeance, and also knowing that they were hunting Diego and also finding his knife on a tree that the blown up Swede was investigating. They will also be hunting him down with a vengeance. So that should be fun to see unfold. In the beginning of the episode, we saw Pogo's history being uncovered. He was a chimp taken in, I say taken in, kind of recruited somewhat by both Grace and Reginald, and he was kind of trained to communicate with them and experimented on, and he was one of the chimps sent into space, but he didn't really make it back as healthily as they would have liked. So Reginald had like one trick up his sleeve. He pulled out one of his mystery syringes and revived Pogo, but with the likely side effect of Pogo having increased kind of sentience and also the ability to actually communicate in a way that people could understand, becoming the Pogo that we saw and met in Season 1 of Umbrella Academy. So that was a fun little tidbit of information. We saw the family reunited. The family all reunited at Elliot's TV hardware store place. They all reunited there and, actually shared all the information they knew and how they were all influencing the second coming of the apocalypse and everything. So that was a fun scene. Luther and Diego got along well enough, and then Vanya and Allison and what's his name, fucking Klaus, they all got along at the salon and had a bit of a dance and had a bit of like a very, very drunken kind of reminisce about their old times and their memories and everything that happened leading up to then. So it was a fun scene. It was a very, very fun scene. So that was cool. And Five, towards the end, discovered the handler. Five actually chased down Lila after having sent her away the first time, and he uncovered that she was actually he uncovered at the very least that the handler was still present in that particular time period and that she was working with Lila. And also uncovered that Lila must have been a part of the agency, because she fought like every other agent sent by the commission to ever handle him or his family or anything like that. So yeah, things are ticking along. The story is ticking along at a pretty comfortable pace. So it's going to be fun to see how things move on. And I think now the only reunion left is pretty much the family and Reginald, at least Reginald from the past and everything. So that should be fun to see unfold. So yeah, that is pretty much all I've got. I think smaller tidbits would be, I think we've yet to see. Alison went back to her husband, whose name is I remember his name. Give me a second. Raymond Chestnut, that's it, Raymond Chestnut, yeah. So I think she said that she was going to tell Raymond everything, so I don't know if there is still some kind of cautious extent to everything, or if she's actually going to unload everything onto him, or what's going to happen, but that's going to be happening. And then Vanya went back to Sissy, and she is gonna... Well, she tried to reconcile things. I mean, the episode again opened up with the night after their night together, and they had some, like loving, drunken kind of words to each other about running away and having a life together and taking Harlan with them. And then that very night again, the husband came back and made his presence and his presence in the household and within the family very known, and then kind of drew Sissy back into that kind of a loveless kind of triangle and everything. So that stuff's not going too well, but I'm sure Vanya will figure out some kind of way to make things right again. But yeah, I think that those would be the smaller tidbits of information. So I think going forward, we'll just see how all this stuff kind of concludes, and how, because I think season 3 is confirmed, so I think I think season 3 must have yet another apocalypse somehow. They must either travel back or forth, or something must happen, and yet another apocalypse comes, maybe at the hands of Vanya, maybe at the hands of someone else, maybe at the hands of all of them again. But season 3 is confirmed, that much is for sure. So it'll be interesting to see how stuff concludes in this season first and foremost. So yeah, that is pretty much all I have from the last episode, so on to episode 6. If you guys want to catch the full-length reaction for this episode, just need your own copy of the episode from Netflix, and you can sync it up, and it'll be all good. That reaction will be over on Patreon, so you can go check that out over there. But yeah, on to episode 6 of The Umbrella Academy. Let's go. So yeah, that was a hell of an episode. That was a great episode. So the handlers deal with 5. So he takes out every one of the board members, and that gives her the power. I mean, would that give her the power though? Because I think AJ is the handler. So I mean, I don't know. I think the board members must be the superiors of the commission. So they have power over, they clearly have power over who is actually picked as a handler. But then if you kill the board members, then I think maybe she goes in and takes over not only as the new handler but also as the board member. She either creates a new board of her own picking, of her own influence, or she takes over as the sole board member, and that gives her more unlimited power over everyone else. So then after that, then the timeline and the commission runs like jazz, and nothing bad actually happens. No more doomsdays, no more apocalypses. So that would give her all the more power. So initially 5 was hesitant to take that deal, given who he was actually working with and who he was making the deal with. But yeah, I think after the chat with Reginald, he was more than happy to actually take on the deal. So now he's gonna actually take on the board. He's gonna execute. I mean, we don't know exactly who the board members are. Like we don't know if it's just like an actual board member, like an actual group of men in suits, and like if they actually know any combat, or if they're actually highly trained professionals from the board who actually, then go on to spawn more highly trained assassins and stuff. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But that is going to be an interesting thing to watch, him actually going into the commission. I wonder then if he's actually going to take out AJ too, because I think AJ being like the current handler, I was going to say he might be a threat to her being the current handler and all, but then if Kate Walsh's handler can actually take over as the board member, that would give her more superiority over him, give her more power over him, so then she'd have, nothing more to worry about at least. So yeah, I don't know, but it's a fair enough deal. And I think also, given the grudge she's holding towards 5, I can't really imagine that this deal would go off without a hitch, or at least go off without her having a few extra tricks up her sleeve, maybe some details she's like holding back or not really revealing as of yet. Like maybe instead, maybe once she becomes once she becomes the sole board member, maybe it means that she then hires every assassin left within the commission to take out the Hargreaves. Maybe she starts off with 5 and then takes out all the rest, or depending on if the Swedes can actually kill Diego, they kill Diego, she handles 5, and then she sends Lila out to kill the rest, maybe. But I don't know, I guess we have to wait and see. But now, by the end of it, 5 did take on that deal. He did agree to that deal, so we have to see just like exactly how hard it is for him to actually take out the board members, and how hard it is for him to get in and out of the commission in doing so. So yeah, that should be fun. And we saw Klaus trying and miraculously failing to disband the cult. He tried giving them words. He tried saying that he was a fraud and that he was like, I think Yeah, I mean, with cults, I mean the way that leaders build themselves up. Some leaders build themselves up to be literal gods and good people who can do no wrong no matter what happens. But I think in this case, Klaus has probably done a similar thing, but in the sense that if he tries to admit to his wrongdoings, or if he tries to admit to his fraudulence, like he did, his followers will take that in completely the wrong way, like they did, like they did. They thought that like admitting their sins, admitting their fraudulencies meant that they were now replenished or revived, or their souls were cleansed or something. Like they didn't realize he was actually saying that he was like a fraudulent person, that he was like a nobody, just like them, like an average Joe, just like them, with the admission of powers too. But they thought it was like, oh, like relinquish yourself of your sins, and you'll be reborn, and you'll still be a part of the cult and everything like that. Like they didn't realize he was actually trying to actively disband them. Honestly, I think like dialogue wise, I don't really think he went about it as well as he could have. I think he didn't. I think he should know his cult better than anyone, and he should also know his cult kind of beliefs and their beliefs and their scriptures better than anyone else. So he should have known that simply admitting himself as a fraud might not have worked as well as he would have hoped. But I think he should have explicitly said, "This cult is over. All of you go home now. Go to wherever home you have. Go back to your lives. This cult is over. I'm leaving." I suggest you all do the same. I think he should have been bolder. The fact that he wasn't as bold as necessary meant that they didn't really take him, interpret his words the way that they were meant to be interpreted. So yeah, it didn't really go as well as he had actually hoped in that sense. But I think now, I don't know. I don't know if this is the end. I think it's clearly not the end that we see of his cult, because I think if that is, then it would just imply that even in his soon-to-be absence, his cult still carries on without a leader, maybe, or maybe they like the new one. But I don't know. Admittedly, his cult is not a storyline in this show I've been as invested in as I'd like. It's not like something I've been really following along too well. Just like knowing it's a cult, it's like, okay, I mean, knowing Klaus, they're not really doing anything harmful, but he is still taking their lives away from them, and that they are still following blindly to a guy who has literally been plagiarizing song lyrics and like modern day popular culture to them, instead of actually providing some independent thought. So yeah, it's like a less harmful cult, but luckily they're not going to do any kind of Jonestown-esque kind of ending or anything. Hopefully that, I mean, they very boldly cleared that off the table, that no one's ever gonna that he's gonna make sure the place is free of any kind of Kool-Aid or anything along that particular line. So clearly he's not really leaving like a mass suicide in the on the cards. So that alone is a good sign. But I think it would still be good to see at the end of everything. Like, it would still be good to see them actually moving on and leaving, and actually realizing the truth behind all of this, and actually making something of themselves in the end. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But on a brighter side, Dave did actually show up. Dave returned. He found Klaus somehow. I can't remember how he said he found him, but he found him somehow, and he decided to actually further inquire about Klaus's knowledge of the future. And it didn't go to. I mean, he revealed some interesting knowledge. His favorite food is a hamburger. His favorite song, his other stuff, and he even actually revealing Dave's kind of inner thoughts, that he feels like his family is ashamed of him, and if he actually revealed his true self, then his family would be even more ashamed of him, and he feels like he's living like another life and everything. But then the future has changed. The future has changed for Dave much sooner than Klaus would have liked for it to be. And I think it's definitely because of Klaus's interaction. It's definitely because of Klaus having gone to that restaurant and having spoken to him and his uncle being like the fierce kind of toxic masculinity, like boistering homophobe that he is. After having seen exactly what kind of person Klaus was and having him around Dave, he pushed for even harder for Dave to actually enlist on that very day. He took him to the enlistment office and actually had him signed up to be drafted out and everything. So Klaus being there made things worse, and now Dave is not only going to ship out sooner than he'd like, but he's also never going to meet Klaus. If he's never going to meet Klaus, that whole history is going to be changed, and that stuff's going to happen. So yeah, it's all a bit of a shambles, but those two, I think those two character kind of interactions, those two stories, you know, Sissy and Vanya and Dave and Klaus, I think it would be better for them to remain intact. It would be better for them to remain intact. I mean, Sissy and Vanya I can see happening a lot more, but I mean, Klaus and Dave, because of that whole stuff is, I mean, I'd say it's based on time travel, but then so is Sissy and Vanya. Sissy, like, you know, like Vanya literally traveled back in time and met Sissy and stuff like that. But I think the difference might be that, you know, like with Sissy and Vanya, we're actually seeing their interaction and their relationship being fleshed out over episodes, whereas with Klaus and Dave, it's a lot more different. Wherein that was very, very brief. Like, we saw that happening in flashbacks in an episode, which then carried him onto the present day, where he went to that veterans bar and found himself in the picture and everything. He met Dave in that, but that was like a lot more concise, which they're now bringing back into the fold through this season. So it's like fairly different context, and also I think different. It's undeniably different times. That is the whole point of this kind of season. But yeah, I don't know. It's different context. I feel different context. So we just have to wait and see exactly how this stuff actually pulls out. But I think just given how much screen time they're giving it, I think I can definitely kind of see Vanya and Sissy reaching somewhat more of a conclusion than I can see Dave and Klaus. But Dave and Klaus did deserve their own happy ending too. They deserve their own happy ending too. So yeah, it's all a shambles. Allison told Raymond everything. She told him that there was a black president, that Obama was a president, he was the black president in the White House, like black. And yeah, and I think that they mentioned that in Supernatural too. I think in Supernatural, when Dean went back in time and met Elliot Ness, that was one of the things like he summarized the future in like a few sentences. He said, like, you know, oh, like gas is this amount of, like, you know, like diesel is this amount of money. You can get cheese in a spray can, I think it was, or like cheese in some kind of thing. And then he's like, oh yeah, president, he's a black guy. And like that is like for that era, that is the president, like that is the most notable kind of thing, which it is. It is an understandably notable piece of human history after so many years. So yeah, and even now, like even now, for the first time in human history, the vice president of America is both a woman of color and she's a woman too. So, you know, it's a notable piece of history. So yeah, so then she showed Raymond her powers, her power stream. I thought she was going to do something non-lethal. I mean, I think if she had experimented on him, if she had actually done her powers on him, then he wouldn't actually know. It's that thing, because it is basically like mind control. It's basically like mind control. Like you're telling them exactly what to do. And it's an interesting way to go about it too. Like, you know, I heard a rumor you did this, that, and the other thing, and everything. I think they started off nice enough. I think the way they started off too, it was actually addressing the whole kind of racial segregation thing. Like, it was actually going into a place where where colored people wouldn't be allowed. And actually granting that kind of right, and that kind of in this day and age, in that day and age too, like, you know, what will be considered a luxury to a black man. So actually going into like that tailor shop and giving not only actually giving him a suit, but also actually letting him try on whatever he wanted. So he was able to try on patterns and colors and different shapes and sizes and different hats and everything, so he could try on whatever he wanted, walk out. And then Allison gets her fair share too. She gets a lovely red flower dress and everything. And I thought that would maybe be where it ends. That might be the kind of cherry on top. Like it would be enough proof. But then she sees the restaurant that I think, I'm not entirely sure if it was the same restaurant that she went to in the like when she first landed and she was kicked out straight afterwards, but it was definitely the restaurant that they did a sit-in at. It was definitely the sit-in restaurant, and she went back in, told the owner that she wanted coffee. You know, first she said, shut your damn mouth, and he turned to Neo from the Matrix. He just was unable to open his mouth and he couldn't speak at all. And then she wanted the coffee, but so much so that, you know, he actually overflowed it into like fresh hot coffee onto his hand, and he burned his hand and everything. I think that kind of darkness, you know, like her taking vengeance like that kind of darkness was what actually took Raymond kind of away from the, wow, this is amazing scale, and like, okay, we're actually veering towards some pretty harmful territory here. Because I think he wants justice, but he does not want to actually, like, he is a peaceful protester. He doesn't want to have to see people get hurt in order to actually get the point across. So seeing her doing something like this too, and actually making it, like, not just that, but actually making him hurt himself out, like, outside of his own control, is also like the limit for him. So yeah, so then that kind of makes him raise more questions. I think also just like seeing the powers in action in that kind of a sense too made him think about, like, this is basically like mind control. So like have you ever used it on me? But also, if you did use it on me, would I ever know? As well. So, it raises questions. It raises questions. You cannot deny that it raises questions, and it makes him think about what their relationship is. And especially because in the first season, we find out that her and her husband actually split because she used her powers on her daughter to make her go to sleep and everything. So he caught wind of that, and then they broke up. And I think she lost custody of her daughter too. So yeah, and I think now she started a new like that whole kind of timeline thing affects, like, that I think it affects the characters too. Like, like, for one thing, she has a daughter back in the modern day, but she also now went back in time and fell in love with someone. I mean, she doesn't have any kids, but she still kind of fell in love with someone else and started like a new life and started like a new family, which admittedly she had no choice but to do. But it's that kind of stuff as well that kind of makes you think just a little bit. But yeah, I think going forward we're just gonna have to see how Raymond actually deals with the actual reality of her powers, the fact that she can the fact that she can make anyone do what she wants them to do, but also like the darkness that lies inside her, given the time period which she lives in and the people she's surrounded by and the actions she faces and the injustices too. So very interesting, very very. I think it's also like a really really good way to pull it off too. So yeah. And yeah, speaking of the romances, we also had Sissy and Vanya. We had Sissy and Vanya reuniting after the meeting with the father and the kids. And yeah, that was... it was heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. It was heartwarming when they were actually reconciling and talking and actually getting their feelings out and actually in tears, making me want to burst into tears. And then it was heartbreaking once we saw Carl, literally, like, like just like 2 steps away from them, next to his own car, and he could see what was going on. He was, I think he was there for long enough, but he could also very clearly see them two eventually just ending up making out in the front seat as well. So yeah, they had to just lead us on with possibilities and signs of hope and happiness for Sissy and Vanya, and then actually eventually just make that all just blow up in our faces with Carl actually discovering that, and it's not gonna go well. It is not gonna go well. I think it was so heartwarming to see actually, like I think seeing Sissy admit to that, the fact that like in that kind of particular time, in that kind of background, women especially couldn't really go for that life, even like they wanted it, but it didn't mean that they actually had the opportunity to actually go for it, to actually pursue that kind of life, pursue that kind of romance. Society would not accept it for a long time. And I think it also even breaks Vanya's heart even more, given when she's really from. She knows that times do change, and like, there's still trouble, sure, there's still a lot of pressure, there's still a lot of backlash, sure, but from when she's from, she knows that it is actually much more possible than it is now. People are still more accepting, there's still waves and waves to go, there's still hurdles you have to cross, but it's a lot more possible when she's from than when Sissy is from. So to see Sissy dealing with that kind of original backlash so directly as well, and so indirectly at the same time, I think it's even harder for her, knowing that Sissy could have what she really wants if she weren't from this time, if she weren't from so far back in human history. Then she could actually have what she wants. And I think, Vanya as well, knowing her and caring for Sissy in particular so much, she wants to be able to give that to her, but she also knows that Sissy is just scared. She is very, very scared of what could happen, and she doesn't want to lose Harlan. Harlan is her son, and especially with Harlan having the conditions he does as well, she knows that he likely wouldn't actually fare as well with anyone else, so she doesn't want to have to lose her to lose him, especially not to Carl. Carl would not know how to actually handle him, and he'd probably like, knowing him, he'd probably do something else even more harmful to Harlan. So yeah, I was so hopeful just for like a few seconds there, until we actually until the camera actually zoomed down. We saw like a figure in the background, and then he like leaned down to actually light a cigarette, and then the fire actually lit his face up, and we saw that it was Carl, and I was like, okay, yeah, we're screwed. Carl is never going to let this fly, especially after seeing firsthand his wife making out with the babysitter. and everything, it's not gonna go well. So we can never. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, given how much more fleshed out Vanya and Sissy's story has been in this season alone, I feel more hopeful. But then seeing stuff like this kind of rips that hope away. It's like with Dave's homophobic uncle coming in just at the last minute, actually breaking up the conversation between him and Klaus. It just rips hope away. It just rips hope away. But hey, this is the '60s for you. This is the '60s. But yeah, I don't know. I do not know. I'm having trouble thinking about that kind of stuff right now. So yeah, it's tough. It's some tough stuff. It's tough stuff. But I think if there's one couple at least that I can actually strive for and maintain some sense of hope for, then it has to be Sissy and Vanya. It has to be them, and especially because I mean, they both have powers, but I think in terms of actual damage, I think because we haven't seen, I think like Ben tried possessing Klaus at like various points in this episode, and nothing actually worked. I thought he'd actually be. I mean, even in the restaurant, I thought he'd actually be able to actually jump into him and unleash, like he usually has those blue tentacles. Like he at least comes out as a ghost and actually has the blue tentacles coming from his stomach and everything, but he didn't even have that. So I thought, surely if he tried to go into him, then he could actually come out again as a ghost and actually make his presence be known. Like Ben, they've not been giving any mercy to Ben. They haven't actually given him any dialogue, any screen time. Like, he hasn't been able to interact with his own family. He's only ever been able to interact through Klaus, and Klaus being the narcissist he is, like Ben said, he just won't give Ben any screen time either. So that's just uncool. That's just really uncool. But yeah, I mean, Klaus having that power, and it seems kind of somewhat ineffective. Besides from him actually being able to communicate with the dead, and then Vanya having her powers, she can make like sonic waves. Like she like just tongued her fork against like the cup or something for like a few seconds, and then it just sent the fruit platter just flying everywhere in pieces. So that was cool. So I think with her powers, she can arguably do more damage than Klaus can. So she can defend Sissy. She can definitely defend Sissy. Just send the car, blowing up, or send the car in pieces across everywhere, or I don't know, something. But I am able to maintain somewhat more hope for Sissy and Vanya than I am for Klaus and Dave right now. But we just have to wait and see how things go. But oh, good God, good diggity God. And yeah, then we had the kids meeting Reginald. We had the children all individually and some together being invited by Reginald to meet with him. And I like that. I find it interesting how he actually called them, labeled them his pursuers. I mean, granted, he didn't know they were his children, but he also labeled them his pursuers. And like, to my knowledge, only Diego, Luther, and Five ever actively pursued him. The rest of them kind of just went on about their ordinary lives. Like we never actually saw or heard any of them. I mean, yeah, because I think Vanya got an invitation at the end. Sissy actually brought Vanya's invitation for her, but Diego and Luther, we actually saw them actually cordially getting their invitations. Five got his invitation, I believe. But yeah, those three were the only ones I ever like to my knowledge that were ever actively pursuing him. The rest of them were just kind of they banded together after a while, sure, but still like the active pursuers were Diego and Luther and Five. So that part kind of confused me. I won't lie, but yeah, and an interesting opening, like them all finding the building, them all piling into the elevator, and then Luther being so nervous he actually, just kind of his ass just goes off inside the confined space of an elevator, which makes all of them kind of just choke on the air and everything. Which was interesting. Well, I mean, not interesting, but it was funny. And then they all go in, they all sit down, and then, yeah, I think the demonstration of powers was cool, Allison rumoring Diego to punch himself in the face, and then Diego, just before that, actually doing his smart knife tricks, and Five teleporting. So I think as they were demonstrating, actually, like Reginald was actually writing all that stuff down and actually documenting their powers and everything. So yeah, but I think it all kind of tied back to Reginald being who he really was, which was an abusive, non-emotional, emotionally incapable kind of prick. Like he like the way he tore into Diego's. I think the way he tore into Diego must have actually been worse than Luther, because with Luther he actually gave him some attention and recognition when he was a kid. He sent him to the moon and made him feel important. With Diego ended up looking for emotional confidence in a robot disguised as his mother more than his actual human father. he ended up actually feeling more emotionally attached to Grace, a robot, um, than his actual human father. So that says a lot. And then of course he grows up with a stammer too, which Reginald chastises him for. So he then gets torn into even more. So I think being torn into definitely affected Diego more than it did Luther. Like Luther just slumped away like a lost puppy, but with Diego he actually he was on the verge of tears, and he then reverted back to his stammer as well. So yeah, that just kind of proves that it also proves that not only was this Reginald definitely not ready for children, but Reginald was never ready for children. He took in children that he saw as experiments. He didn't really see them as children. He took them in. He recognized them for their kind of birth peculiarities of being born on the same day to women who were never pregnant, and then of course all of them having abilities too. But then he actually trained them. He trained them to be heroes, but not in like an actual heroic, righteous way, but just because he knew that they were capable, and he treated them more like that instead of actual children with childhoods and everything. And even Viney, he locked her away and convinced her that she never had powers. So yeah, this Reginald is just he's a special breed. He's a special breed of arsehole. So yeah. And then, of course, 5, having matured the way he did during the apocalypse and growing up the way he did during the apocalypse, he becomes the only one actually mature enough and also self-absorbed enough to actually have some kind of a peaceful debate or conversation with Reginald. And again, that whole scene too, like Reginald and 5 actually having like a peaceful scientific conversation regarding the apocalypse and powers and time travel and everything like that. So like that. Like 5 doesn't like him any more or less than the rest of them do, but he's also the only one capable of actually holding himself back enough. And he also, I think he also knows and respects that, Reginald, for what, like, despite what he's done to them and despite what he is, he also does still have a lot of wisdom to offer. So he is still, it's worth holding it in to actually have that kind of a conversation with him, to see what he knows, to see what he can do. Which admittedly wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot besides from some crap about acorns and water and all that kind of stuff, and also like they said telling him to actually wait to try traveling seconds instead of years and decades and everything. So then that kind of useless information then prompted him to actually go forth and confirm the deal with the handler instead. So now we'll see. So I think I don't think that's the last we'll see of Reginald. I feel like that there is possibly more we could see from him, but whether or not they actually go down that path, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, finally we got that reunion. So last episode we got the kids reunion, and now we get the father and kids reunion in the most kind of emotionally unsatisfying of ways. So yeah. And yeah, R.I.P. to Elliot. R.I.P. to Elliot. He was tortured and then killed by the Swedes. Didn't know where Diego was, and they wanted that information. So I think maybe because he actually couldn't give them the information, they ended up killing him instead. So R.I.P. to him. I figured as soon as I saw the blood and there was no noise, I figured that they either abducted him or they must have killed him. If they abducted him, it would be like a ransom, like, oh, you give us Diego and we'll give you back Elliot or something like that. Which, I mean, story-wise, it could have still worked out. He was still an innocent man. He was on the kids' side the entire time. He was helping them in any way he could, so that they might have still done something. But I think killing him, I think for his character, to, like, he has no one else. He has no other family, no other friends or anything. So I think maybe like a ransom wouldn't really work well emotionally for the audience. And the audience might not have felt as connected to him. So killing him off would it would also send a better message. Like the message they left in literal blood, in his own blood, was ogre for I don't know how to pronounce it in Spanish, but it was ogre for ogre. So, and it was written in blood too. So I feel like it might have been like an eye for an eye or blood for blood. Like, oh, you take one of ours, you kill one of ours, because they were told by the handler that Diego killed their brother. So you kill one of ours, we kill one of yours too. So like they were there for Diego, but they were like, you know what? For now we'll settle for what we can get. But one day soon we'll get our hands on Diego. So for now, you lose one of yours after you killed one of ours. So ogre for ogre. So yeah, rip to Elliot. He tried. He stood his ground. He tried going for the gun, but they were too quick and too fast. I mean, knowing it was Elliot, he's going up against 2 highly trained professional assassins. So he never stood a chance, not one bit. But they took him out of the game. I think now they can definitely. I think now they probably killed him off so that now they can actually focus on the kids a bit more, because up until like a few episodes back, they didn't really give Elliot much screen time or dialogue or development or anything like that. So now it's actually gives it actually gives them the opportunity to focus more on the actual main characters, which isn't the best. If you bring a character in, obviously develop them the best way you can, but you know, rip to Elliot and all, rip to Elliot. And I think he definitely felt more disposable too. He definitely felt more like the one who would die for the cause or die for blood than anything else. So it makes sense. As bad as it sounds, as bad as it feels to say, it does still make sense. It does still make sense. So yeah, rip to Elliot. R.I.P. to Elliot. But yeah, that is pretty much it. That is all I've got from this episode. So going forward, it'll be good to see how Sissy and Vanya deal with the whole Carl issue they've got now on their hands, and how the kids actually deal going forward with the rest of the apocalypse stuff, and how and exactly how it goes down for 5 in taking down the board members of the commission, and how the apocalypse stuff goes down. I think we've got like a few more episodes to go, and then we'll be close to the end, very, very close to the end, so it'll be good to see how it all concludes, and exactly what loose ends are left open for the confirmed 3rd season. So, yeah, it'll be fun, So that is pretty much all I have from this one. So that was the Umbrella Academy, Season 2, Episode 6. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed it, then salt and burn that like button. Comment on what you thought of the episode, and what you think is coming up next time on the Umbrella Academy. And yeah, and then also if you guys want the full-length reaction for this episode, once again, that'll be over on Patreon, so you can go check that out over there. And yeah, that is it. So I will see you guys next time.